This is the first time government forces have used barrel bombs in Daraa in a year. Helicopters struck several villages in what appears to be a major advance to take over the city. But this violates a truce that was brokered by Russia and the United States in efforts to bring an end to the 7-year war. The rebels, who are losing ground, remain defiant.
We don't recognize Assad's authority. He has destroyed our cities and killed our people. He destroyed Syria to stay in power. We will never recognize him, and we reject the presence of Iranian and Afghan militias. It's only Syrians who should decide the future of the country.
The Syrian army is massing troops in the area. The opposition says thousands of Shia militias are also moving in. Daraa was the focal point of the Syrian uprising in 2011. But in recent years, the rebels have been retreating. They now control one neighborhood in the city and a few areas on the border with Jordan. This is a show of force by the Free Syrian Army in Daraa. For years, the FSA was trained and armed by the US, Europe and Gulf countries. But that support has diminished over the last few years. Anti-Assad forces are largely outgunned and outnumbered.
Political commentator and analyst Jason Unruh joins us now from Ontario. Mr. Unruh, welcome to the program. Give us your thoughts on the recent major advances that are starting by the Syrian army in the south of Syria.
Well, I think this is a very significant moment because it shows two distinct aspects of the situation. Firstly, despite the denial by some countries and some forces in the world, the U.S. is backing these forces. And now that the U.S. is no longer backing them, they are now beginning to lose. I mean, it's very obvious that the U.S. was backing these forces, but there were still people holding out in denial of this. And now that we see, all of a sudden, they start losing now that they no longer have U.S. support. It's very clear what was going on. And I think that another very serious aspect of this is the fact that this region where these battles are taking place are right next to, like they're on the border with the Golan Heights. Now, this is significant because that's where Israeli forces are giving emergency medical services to fighters who have been wounded in fighting the Syrian government. That particular corridor is where a lot of the aid that Israel gives to these forces is situated. This is like their main hub for distribution of aid and medical services to injured fighters. If this gets cut off, then they're left in a very difficult situation where much of their supplies are going to be lost. And this is definitely going to frustrate the efforts of Israel to interfere in the Syrian conflict. So we not only have the U.S. pulling out and allowing these forces to start losing, and they're shifting their attention elsewhere, particularly the Kurdish regions, and now that they've lost the country, but will still attempt to balkanize the area. But now the Israelis are going to become frustrated as a result of their loss of their ability to immediately impact the ongoing conflict, which means we might see Israel carrying out some kind of retaliatory measure as a result of this, if there can be a direct cut between Israel and the Takfiri forces inside the country. And I think that's a major issue that will still be decided. How is Israel going to retaliate against this?
So that is a major issue. As you mentioned, it's usually at this point when the Syrian army is making major advances that either the Israelis or at some points, as we've seen in the past, the U.S. itself steps in and makes and gives some sort of a response with regards to what's taking place on the ground.
Yes, definitely. When there is a big advance like this, Israel will come in and they'll bomb something in complete violation of the law, just complete disregard for the way that conduct is supposed to be carried out, with a disregard to human rights, etc. And this is also one of the time when the United States and many of its proxy forces, including the White Helmets, which the U.S. has also begun funding once again, make allegations of chemical weapon attacks, chlorine gas attacks. And this has been a repeated pattern. As soon as the Syrian government makes any kind of significant advance, all of a sudden the White Helmets have a propaganda op where they fake rescue civilians, or as they have been in the past, faked chemical attacks against the population, ones that go completely unverified with no evidence whatsoever, as we see with the current case that is before the OPCW right now. So I think not only can we see some kind of retaliation from Israel for this, most likely in the form of some kind of airstrikes, but possibly something, the U.S. justifying some kind of action against the government sometime soon.
Jason Unruh, political commentator and analyst, joining us from Ontario. Thank you very much for your comments.